You're listening to Underground USA News.
Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. In a significant victory for President Donald Trump, the Supreme Court has temporarily allowed his administration to withhold $4 billion in foreign aid, reinforcing the executive's prerogative to align spending with national priorities. The decision, prompted by an emergency request from the Trump administration, overturns a lower court ruling by U.S. District Judge Amir Ali, who had ordered the release of the funds. Chief Justice John Roberts issued a brief order permitting the freeze, following Trump's August 28th notification to Congress of his intent to halt the aid under the Impoundment Control Act. The administration argued that releasing the funds would undermine U.S. foreign policy and threaten the separation of powers, a stance the court's conservative majority appears to support for now. This ruling underscores the ongoing tension between congressional spending power and executive discretion, with the case set to continue in lower courts. The Make America Healthy Again Commission, led by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., released a comprehensive report on September 9th outlining a strategy to address the alarming rise in chronic illnesses among American children. The report identifies toxic, ultra-processed diets, chemical exposures, chronic stress, and overmedicalization as key drivers of the crisis, advocating for reforms to reduce reliance on industrial junk food, scrutinize environmental toxins, and reassess pharmaceutical practices. While the Commission's call for healthier food systems and reduced chemical exposure resonates with common-sense conservative values prioritizing family well-being, its push to review childhood vaccine schedules has sparked debate, with critics urging careful consideration to avoid undermining public health. This initiative reflects a commitment to restoring America's vitality by tackling root causes over quick-fix solutions. Newly released emails reveal that Dr. Anthony Fauci instructed colleagues to delete federal records as early as February 2020, raising serious questions about transparency during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to U.S. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Tennessee, the allegations suggest Fauci, alongside Francis Collins and Jeremy Farrar, sought to control the narrative surrounding the virus's origins, particularly regarding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. These claims, supported by a House Select Subcommittee report, indicate Fauci may have misled Congress under oath about NIH funding for such research. Critics argue this pattern of obfuscation undermines public trust in health institutions, with Fauci's actions potentially shielding critical information from scrutiny. The Producer Price Index for final demand fell by 0.1% in August 2025, defying expectations of a 0.3% increase, according to the Labor Department. This decline, driven by a 0.8% drop in goods prices and a slight 0.2% rise in services, suggests relief from inflationary pressures, but raises concerns about weakening demand amid high interest rates and global trade uncertainties. Core PPI, excluding volatile food and energy, rose 0.3%, indicating persistent underlying price pressures. Economists warn that while this dip may ease consumer costs, it could also reflect a slowing economy, potentially complicating the Federal Reserve's efforts to balance growth and inflation control. Conservatives view this as a call for prudent fiscal policies to stabilize markets without stifling growth. President Trump has taken a firm stand against misleading pharmaceutical advertising, signing a memorandum on September 9th directing the FDA to enforce stricter transparency rules for TV and social media drug ads. The move, which falls short of a total ban promised by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. during the 2024 campaign, aims to ensure drug companies disclose a fair balance of risks and benefits, addressing a loophole that has allowed vague disclosures since the 1990s. The FDA is sending 100 cease and desist letters and thousands of warnings to drug makers, targeting deceptive promotions, including those by social media influencers. This action reflects a conservative commitment to protecting consumers from big pharma's overreach while respecting legal limits, as past attempts to regulate ads faced First Amendment challenges. It's a practical step toward restoring trust in healthcare, prioritizing patient safety over corporate profits. An insider at Twitter, in collusion with government operatives, created fake gotcha, accounts to frame a prominent conservative figure, according to a detailed report. The scheme, uncovered during a federal investigation, points to a coordinated effort involving Democrat staffers and social media allies to silence dissenting voices critical of the 2020 election's integrity. The Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies reportedly exploited administrative backdoors into social media platforms, including Twitter, to manipulate narratives and extract user data, raising serious concerns about government fascism, overreach, and censorship. This disturbing abuse of power underscores the need for transparency and accountability in how federal agencies interact with private platforms to control public discourse. The Missouri House of Representatives, led by a Republican majority, voted on September 9th to approve a new congressional map aimed at eliminating a Democrat-held seat in Kansas City, currently represented by U.S. Representative Emanuel Cleaver. The redistricting effort, backed by President Trump and Governor Mike Kehoe, seeks to more accurately represent Missouri's electorate, bolstering GOP chances in the 2026 midterms by creating an additional Republican-leaning district, potentially shifting Missouri's congressional delegation from a 6-2 to a 7-1 Republican advantage. Critics, including Democrats, argue the mid-decade redistricting is an unethical overreach, potentially violating the Missouri Constitution, and could face legal challenges or a voter referendum. Supporters, however, see it as a strategic necessity to maintain conservative values in Congress, aligning with Trump's broader push for GOP-friendly maps nationwide. Graham Plattner, a Democrat Senate candidate challenging Maine's Republican Senator Susan Collins in 2026, faces scrutiny for a 2002 post-September 11th attack op-ed he co-wrote as a high schooler, where he argued that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and criticized the media for portraying terrorists as evil. The piece, published in the Bangor Daily News, defended the motivations of terrorist groups, including Chechen rebels, and questioned Israel's portrayal as a victim in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Plattner, now an oyster farmer and Marine veteran, has not distanced himself from these views, which align with his current anti-Israel rhetoric, including accusations of genocide against Israel in Gaza, while his campaign gains traction among progressives, with endorsements from figures like Senator Bernie Sanders, a socialist from Vermont. These resurfaced writings raise questions about his judgment and electability in a state that values Collins' moderate record. The Department of Justice has filed federal charges against DeCarlos Brown Jr., a 34-year-old repeat offender with a history of violent crimes, for the unprovoked stabbing death of 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska on a Charlotte, North Carolina, light rail on August 22nd. Zarutska, who fled Ukraine's war to seek safety in America, was fatally stabbed 3 times, including in the neck, in a horrific attack captured on surveillance video, sparking outrage over soft-on-crime policies that allowed Brown, previously released on a written promise, despite 14 prior arrests, to roam free. Attorney General Pam Bondi vowed to seek the maximum penalty, potentially life imprisonment or the death penalty, to ensure justice for Zarutska and address the failures of a system that critics argue prioritizes criminals over victims. The case has fueled calls for tougher transit security and judicial accountability, with many questioning how such a tragedy could occur in a nation that promised Zarutska refuge. Wall Street stalwart Cantor Fitzgerald has introduced the Cantor Fitzgerald Gold Protected Bitcoin Fund, a strategic investment vehicle designed to capture Bitcoin's long-term upside while mitigating its notorious volatility through gold-backed downside protection. Announced at the Bitcoin 2025 conference in Las Vegas and launched on September 8th, the fund targets investors wary of cryptocurrency's wild price swings, offering exposure to Bitcoin's gains, recently trading at $112,182, down 9% from its all-time high of $124,128, while leveraging gold's historical stability, which hit a record $36.80 recently. This move, blending digital assets with traditional safe haven investments, reflects Cantor's broader push into crypto, including a Bitcoin lending business with partners like Falcon X and Maple Finance, signaling a prudent yet forward-thinking approach to integrating cryptocurrencies into mainstream portfolios for those prioritizing financial security. France descended into turmoil on September 10th as the Block Everything movement, fueled by widespread frustration with President Emmanuel Macron's policies and austerity measures, led to road blockades, fires, and clashes with police across the nation. Protesters, rallying against Macron's appointment of Sébastien Lecornu as the fifth prime minister in 2 years, blocked highways, disrupted train stations, and set fire to a restaurant in Paris, prompting a massive deployment of 80,000 police officers and nearly 200 arrests by midday. The movement, born online and lacking centralized leadership, echoes the 2018 Yellow Vest protests, reflecting deep discontent with a political elite perceived as out of touch and overly focused on budget cuts that burden ordinary citizens. While Macron's critics argue his leadership ignores the working class, the heavy-handed police response and accusations of foreign interference, including severed pigs' heads near mosques, underscore the growing instability in a nation grappling with economic and political crises. The British government has officially stated that Israel's actions in Gaza do not constitute genocide, marking a shift from its prior stance that such determinations should be left to international courts. In a letter from former Foreign Secretary David Lammy, the UK Foreign Office concluded that Israel lacks the specific intent required under the Genocide Convention to destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, despite acknowledging the tragic loss of over 64,000 Palestinian lives and severe humanitarian challenges. This position, articulated ahead of a controversial visit by Israeli President Isaac Herzog, has sparked debate within the Labour Party, with some MPs criticizing the government for not condemning Israel more strongly, while others see it as a pragmatic acknowledgement of Israel's defensive actions against Hamas following the October 7, 2023 attacks. The decision aligns with a conservative perspective emphasizing national sovereignty and the complexity of attributing intent in warfare, while urging Israel to address civilian suffering. In a tragic escalation of violence, Hamas's military wing, the Qassam Brigades, claimed responsibility for a deadly shooting at a Jerusalem bus stop on September 8, which killed at least 6 people and injured several others, marking the city's deadliest attack in over 2 years. The assailants, identified as Palestinians from West Bank villages, were neutralized at the scene by Israeli forces. Hamas praised the attack as a heroic response to Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza and the West Bank, while the Palestinian Authority condemned the violence. This incident, coupled with Israel's subsequent targeted strikes on Hamas leaders in Qatar, underscores the intensifying conflict and the challenges of achieving a ceasefire, as both sides remain entrenched in their positions. Poland's military, backed by NATO allies, shot down at least 3 Russian drones that violated its airspace during a large-scale Russian attack on Ukraine, marking the first time a NATO member has fired on Russian assets in the ongoing conflict. Prime Minister Donald Tusk described the incident as a large-scale provocation, warning it brings Poland closer to military conflict than at any time since World War II, while Ukraine's foreign minister accused Moscow of expanding the war with impunity. The incursion, which involved 19 drones entering Polish airspace, prompted Warsaw to invoke NATO's Article 4 for consultations, raising fears of further escalation as Russia denies intentional targeting. This unprecedented event underscores the growing risk of the Ukraine conflict spilling into NATO territory, demanding a firm response to deter Moscow's reckless behavior. Iran's government has confirmed it no longer has access to its stockpiles of enriched uranium, following a 12-day conflict with Israel and subsequent U.S. airstrikes in June 2025, raising concerns about the security of its nuclear program. Iranian spokesperson Fatmeh Mohajerani stated the uranium is in an inaccessible location, likely buried under rubble at heavily damaged facilities like Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The International Atomic Energy Agency has been unable to verify Iran's 440.9 kilograms of near-weapons-grade uranium for over 2 months, prompting fears that Tehran could attempt to recover or conceal the material to advance its nuclear ambitions. This development underscores the effectiveness of U.S. and Israeli military actions in curbing Iran's nuclear threat, though questions remain about the long-term implications of unmonitored fissile material. The U.S. Treasury Department has imposed sanctions on cyber scam operations in Myanmar and Cambodia, targeting networks that defrauded Americans of over $10 billion in 2024 through forced labor and violent coercion. These criminal enterprises, often linked to Chinese organized crime, operate scam centers like SHWE Kako in Myanmar, exploiting thousands in modern slavery to perpetrate pig butchering schemes that lure victims into fake cryptocurrency investments. The sanctions, affecting 9 targets in Myanmar and 10 in Cambodia, aim to disrupt these transnational criminal organizations and protect American financial security, reflecting a firm commitment to combating global cybercrime and human rights abuses under the Magnitsky Act. Cuba's national power grid suffered its 4th collapse in less than a year on September 10th, plunging millions into darkness and highlighting the chronic mismanagement of the island's aging infrastructure under its communist government. The blackout, triggered by an unexpected outage at the Gaitras thermal power plant, left Havana and beyond without electricity, with no clear timeline for restoration, as daily blackouts of up to 16 hours already plague residents. This crisis, compounded by fuel shortages and economic turmoil, underscores the regime's inability to provide basic services, driving desperation among Cubans facing a deepening humanitarian crisis as they cry out to the world for freedom.
You're listening to Underground USA News.